everyone, Olga with you. Thanks for appreciating my storytelling of stories of Russian prisoners of war. Not all of them are interesting and worth to retell, but today I'm coming up with another really unique and interesting story of the guy. I'm taking those stories from the YouTube channel of Volodymyr Zolkin. He is our journalist, and always these stories is not just a story, it's conversation with a lot of questions and a lot of assumptions and a lot of ideas. So usually I'm retelling you just a story, but today I will tell you ideas of this guy, story of this guy, and hope you will like it. Okay, let's hit the point. The guy today, his name is Maxim. He was born in 2000, so he is now 22 years old, and he was a soldier of mandatory military service. In Russia, as I already told in previous videos, but just shortly will remind you that most of men, they are obligated to do military service. So it's not volunteering, you must go. You can serve as per contract, and I guess you will serve longer time. Or if you don't want to have a contract, you can just go have mandatory military service for 1 year, and then you can be free to do whatever you want. And this guy, he was exactly part of such kind of mandatory military service. He is a programmer by his profession. He was system administrator, then he was learning programming. He started do programming, but while he didn't study at university, because if you study in university, they will not call you for army. He got a call for military service, and he go to serve in October 2021. So it was before invasion started, actually. The interesting things what he was talking in this video. He said he actually wanted to leave Russia. He don't want to live in Russia, and he wanted to go and live in Ukraine. Why in Ukraine? Because he don't really know foreign languages, and he was believing that in Ukraine he would be very fine even while he is just speaking Russian. And he had a lot of trainings online for his programming, and many of his teachers was Ukrainians, and he was in contact with them for a couple of years. They became a good friends. Even he never traveled to Ukraine, but he was somehow having good connection with them. And the interesting thing what he said, that in Russia, actually anywhere, if you want, you always have internal ID in Ukraine, in Russia. And if you want to go abroad, you need to obtain special passport which will allow you to go abroad. So it would be in English language and so on. And in Russia, he said they will not issue you this passport if you didn't serve in army at all. If you want to have a good job, also they will most likely ask you for this military paper, and if you didn't serve in army, you will not be accepted for any kind of good job. In Ukraine also, if you want to obtain such kind of document for abroad, to be able to travel abroad, they also ask you to bring paper from the police and from military, but they never tell if you didn't serve, you cannot obtain this passport. We don't have such things in Ukraine, but he said it is the case in Russia. They will not issue you this passport if you didn't serve in army. And he said for average Russian person, and he is from Saratov, which is almost about 1 million people population, so it's some kind of city in Russia. It's not capital, not very major city, but it's a big city of 1 million people population, that even for their city, the one who can afford to go abroad, this is a big privilege. This is a really rich people. This is kind of top level of guys who is going abroad, because most of population, they never travel abroad, they never have this document for traveling abroad, and they are not aware of any life outside. So he went to serve in army exactly to be able to leave Russia after that and go to Ukraine. So he go for serving in October 2021, and first 3 months, I guess, this is mandatory kind of military training where they actually teach these soldiers how to be a soldier, how to fight. He said it was 3 months, there was 80 people, they was just living on the base, they didn't allow them to go anywhere and all these kind of things. Nothing really special about that. The interesting things which I can tell you out of what he said, out of his words, that there is very huge division of the people based on national, based on ethnicity, let's say like that. So they're all citizens of Russia, but as you know, Russia, unlike Ukraine, have huge amount of nationalities whose land is there, who was always living in Russia, and they just are living under the Russian government. So I mean, this is not expats or some people who move to Russia and live in there, like for example, you can say in US or in Canada. So it's just mix of nationalities who came from outside. No, Russia, they have so many ethnicities who was always living in all these territories of Russia, and just one time Russian Empire invade all of them, and now they're all living, now they're all part of Russian Federation. Anyway, there is so many small republics. There is the republics in Russia, autonomical republics, and there are just some ethnicities which is not having their own republic, but still they're different ethnicities. So he said, and he, by the way, this guy by himself, he is not Slavic Russian. He is also from some kind of ethnicity which called Chuvash. I'm not sure if this is the right English translation, but this is the name of their ethnicity. So he is not Slavic, if somebody want to say that he is not. So he by himself is from different ethnicity, and there is also, he said they had kind of like guys from Dagestan, which was something like 23 people, I guess, in this, all their guys, and there was 59 Russians that he somehow count himself as normal Russian, and there was also a group of guys from Tuva. There is such kind of republic in Russia also. So he said first they was having very big fights between Russians and people from Dagestan, and the one who is from Dagestan, they was always very united, and they was always kicking Russians, even the case that there was something like 2 times less or even more than 2 times less, so there was 20 something and Russians was almost 60. He said they was always kicking them and kicking hard. So it was hard kicks. Somebody can have broken head, for example, broken nose and all these kind of things. But he said from another side, they know how to kick to not really leave the marks, mostly. Then he said the most aggressive people is people from Tuva, the soldiers. He said they was fighting with everybody. They was always having knives, even it's not allowed to have knives in army. They was always taking knives from them, and they keep having knives, and they was super aggressive, and they was fighting between each with this other kind of ethnicities which is in Russian army, and with Russians by themselves, with white Russians, let's say like that. And by the way, these guys from Tuva that he was talking about, this is also, many of them was in Bucha, in Irpin, and many of those atrocities which we heard in Ukraine, that was exactly done by those guys. So he just pinpoint that there is a big, like you can say, racism in Russia, especially in army, between all these different ethnicities. That was the interesting point that he was talking about. So this guy, he starts serving in army. He was 3 months in this kind of military training. Then they sent him to some kind of military base somewhere around Ukrainian border. He said he was having also allergy, and allergy for all kind of dust. And this allergy always was leading to some more hard consequences that he had to go to hospital and recover. So on the 24th of February, when the war started and invasion started, he was again in the hospital, because he said in total he was something like 3 months in the hospital. But it's in total, so every time 3 weeks, 1 month or something. So once the 24th February started, he was exactly in the hospital. He was having inflammation of inner ear, and he was on treatment. And he said that the first information that he started receiving of all this bombing and all these things, it was from his Ukrainian colleagues and friends, because he was having phone with him. And he was understanding that there is something very crazy things happening, and he said it was still hard to believe that Russia really can hit civilians, destroy everything, bomb just normal apartments, but he was somehow trusting these guys who was sending him all these videos. Ukrainian, his Ukrainian friends. Then he said he back to his military base for normal service. And he said, yeah, he noticed there was a huge amount of equipment. They bring mobilized guys from Luhansk and Donetsk occupied regions, which is occupied by Russia. And they bring them, give them uniform, they give them weapon, and they send them back to fight in Ukraine. He said what he was mostly doing, he was offloading weapon, he was doing a lot of this kind of stuff. So they didn't engage him in the beginning to fight or to go to front line, for example. Another interesting thing which he said, that he was serving as mandatory military service, and in the moment before invasion, something like 1 week before, he was in hospital, and he said his colleagues, other soldiers, they start saying that they all changed their service to the contract. So they all make them contractors, even they didn't sign anything, they didn't agree on anything, they just make them contractors and done. And he said once he get out every week when they have some kind of assembly, they was having some officers who was pressurizing them morally that as per your contract you must go and you must go fight in Ukraine. And there was so many guys was resisting so much and keep stating we didn't sign anything, we don't want to be in contract, we are just mandatory military service and all this kind of things. And he said somehow they was not really, it was somehow passing, so they didn't really grab them by force. But he said because in the beginning there was so much soldiers who was passing through their military base who was going to fight. Then he said he actually, he by himself is not the fighter type, and there was some kind of like, it's not about job offer, but offer from some kind of commander office. I'm not sure how is it called exactly in English, but some soldiers, they can go and work instead of sitting in military base, they can go to work in some kind of office where they deal mostly with paperwork regarding military. So this guy, he go there, and his job was he need to deal with all these papers, write a lot of reports, do a lot of, so it's all about paperwork. And he started working in this kind of small head office, which was managing some kind of area. And he was working, as I understand, something like from April maybe till September. He was working on this place. And he said while he was working, he started seeing more things. First, he started seeing that so many guys are running away from army because he's the one who need to write reports about them, and he need to write reports every day. If somebody is not appearing, he is keep writing and writing reports. Then he said already since by that time there was already people, a lot of people who start returning from war in Ukraine. And he said he heard all the crazy stories which they was talking about. First, how they was shooting civilians, and that was very crazy for him. And they was telling how they was really shooting the buses with people and all that kind of things. They was admitting that. And he said the most interesting that after they was coming back, they start doing same things in Russia. So he said there was one guy who was just in military vehicle. He just drive on top of some civilian car in Russia already. And while he was working in this office with the documents, he said that at the end he noticed that nothing happened to him. They just closed their eyes on this. So they was writing some reports, they were submitting it, but nothing really happened to him. There was no consequences for him, for that soldiers, for that. Then he said, since people start going back from Ukraine, besides these racism groups which they had in army, they start having another group of people who back from Ukraine and who fight. And those people was also a part of everybody. They was the most cool guys or whatever, the one who see the life. And also he said there was a lot of fights inside. He was again writing all these reports about these fights, and he also said he didn't really find any kind of prosecution for these cases. So he was writing, submitting these papers. After a couple of months, he saw those people again in army. The things which he admitted was that for sure the amount of people was becoming less and less and less especially by September, the amount of soldiers, the amount of people, the amount of human resources become way less. And they even sent this guy by himself, this Maxim. They sent him already to the border with Ukraine. While he still was working with the documents, they was somehow keeping him, not bringing him to Ukraine to the last moment. And they sent him to the border. They said, bring with you laptop, bring with you printer, and keep working what you are doing, like with all these documents, but stay on the border because they need to watch if there is no... and he was from the point of the border which was controlled by Ukraine. So there is border, behind the border there is Ukraine, so Russia didn't invade that part. And from another side there is Russia. He said at the end the people was so much in shortage that he was actually 120 days on shift without changing because there was no replacement. And he started saying that he was understanding all that. He was hearing a lot of stories. He was dealing with documents and he see many things happening. And he said he understood that he would be the next one that he will be sent to front line. They will just find another guy who need to be dealing with documents at the end, and they will send him to front line. And he started thinking that he also want to leave army, escape, and yeah, he don't want to be sent to front line. So he started thinking, he started planning, he know the system very good, he know the time when it's the best time to leave, and he said he prepare his friends so they don't need to notify the commanders that this guy disappeared instantly, so he need to win some time. Then he said he just get out of military base, he know the places which is not protected, he just went out, he took a taxi, he drive to, he had map, he had compass, and he drive to, he decided to go, he drive to some specific village, and from that village he start walking. He tried to walk away of people, he tried to walk away of any noise through the forest and so on, just heading west, so he will reach somewhere Ukraine. While he was having Ukrainian friends, they was sharing with him, we have such kind of Telegram bot and we have hotline that you can call, and if you're a Russian soldier, you don't want to fight and you want to submit instantly, there is Telegram bot and, yeah, as I said, hotline that you can contact and they will help you. So he said once he reached to the border, he crossed it somehow, and no, I guess still on the border, he exactly tried to call to this line, he wasn't able to call because of bad connection, and he was able to send this Telegram bot, he was able to say who he is, where he's located, it will send his coordinates, and it will tell him where he needs to come, so he can be accepted to submit by Ukrainian soldiers. So they told him that yes, you need to come to this village, which was exactly next to the border, and come to this place, it was location of some school, and we will be waiting for you. He crossed the border. First he met some guy who was with the cows or something. He said he didn't really help him so much to understand where is the village. Then there was another guy came who explained him how to reach to the village. He said he also refilled his bottle of water because his water get finished. He was walking 2 days to Ukrainian border. Then he said he reached to that village that they told him that was the first village after border. He said there is some kind of few houses, then a big field, and then after this field there is the rest of the village. So he reached to these few houses. He found some girl, and she tried to explain him how to reach. He didn't really understand, and she was having 2 kids. One is boy, something like he said 13 years old, and the girl something like 8-10 years old. She sent her kids with him to show him the place how to reach to the middle of the village, to that school. He said he swear that he will not do anything bad to kids, but you know, this is very crazy for me still. And he said he give some knife to these kids as a gift even. yeah, then he said he reached to that place, he find that school. Once he come, those guys was already waiting for him. And yeah, he said nobody kicked him, nobody deal with him in a bad way. He said they proposed him even some sweets. And that's actually all that was his story. Now he's same captured soldiers like everybody else. That's actually the end of his story. He didn't want to fight. But you know what I start thinking? I don't know really, but I start thinking that such guys who didn't fight at all, he was at all on Russian territory. He was afraid that they will send him to fight, and he decided to go and submit by himself in Ukraine. He should be somehow different, treated different, or the consequences of his submission should be different than the guys who was fighting or who got captured on the front line. Even if they are mobilized, they go without having desire to fight, still they was on the front line with weapon, and they was captured by Ukrainian soldiers, unlike somebody who came by himself from Russian territory directly to submission. So I guess they should be treated differently. Maybe they will not exchange him to other guys, because I don't think he don't want to be exchanged. Actually, he don't want to live in Russia. It would be interesting to know what would be the end of the story with him. Maybe if I will find the end of the story, if they will publish it, I will notify you and will tell you how did it finish. So please guys, tell me if you enjoyed this story. What do you think about all the things which he talked about? The whole interview was really interesting. So if you really can watch it with subtitles, I would encourage you to listen, because he was talking about so many interesting things. I pinpoint you the most bright facts that he was talking about, but you're most welcome to watch full version of interview. I guess you will find many interesting things for yourself. Thanks for watching this video. Bye bye.